a Milwaukee County judge who allegedly helped an undocumented immigrant escape federal agents, has lost her bid to dismiss the charges against her, and now faces up to 6 years in prison. This is a story that's shaking the judicial system and raising serious questions about the limits of judicial immunity. Let's break down what happened and why this case could set a major precedent. The center of this controversy is Judge Hannah Dugan, a 65-year-old Milwaukee County Circuit Court judge who has been on the bench for 9 years. On April 18th of this year, federal agents arrived at the Milwaukee County Courthouse with a plan to arrest Eduardo Flores-Ruiz, a 31-year-old Mexican national who had been previously deported in 2013 but had illegally re-entered the United States.
What do we want? Justice! What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now! It's hard to believe that we're still here waging this fight. When I worked at the Department of Justice, when they made a mistake, they would acknowledge it, correct it, and move on. This started with a mistake. They picked him up. They deported him. They knew it was illegal. They acknowledged it because the judge said he could stay here, but instead of acknowledging it and bringing him back, they said, we can't bring him back. They lied. The Supreme Court said, no, he gets his day in court, bring him back. But they didn't want to back down and just do what the Supreme Court ordered them to do. So they charged him with crimes in Tennessee that came out of nowhere. And then they brought him back immediately. So we knew they could bring him back, right? We know they can give him justice, right? But they keep fighting it. So he went in front of another judge in Tennessee, and what did that judge say? He looked at the case that they charged him with and said, you know what? I think he should be able to go home. I think he should be able to stay home. I think he should have his day in court.
This wasn't just any routine arrest operation. Multiple federal agencies had coordinated their efforts, demonstrating the priority they placed on apprehending Flores-Ruiz. The case highlights the complex intersection between state court proceedings and federal immigration enforcement that has become increasingly contentious across the country. Flores-Ruiz was scheduled to appear in Judge Dugan's courtroom that day for a pre-trial conference on domestic violence charges. He was facing 3 misdemeanor counts of battery with domestic abuse modifiers stemming from a March 12th incident at his residence. What the court appearance was supposed to be routine quickly turned into a federal case that would land a sitting judge in handcuffs. According to federal prosecutors, ICE agents from the Enforcement and Removal Operations Division, along with partners from the FBI, DEA, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection, positioned themselves outside Judge Dugan's courtroom. They had a valid administrative arrest warrant for Flores-Ruiz based on immigration violations. The plan was simple: wait for him to finish his court appearance, then arrest him in the public hallway. But Judge Dugan had other plans. When she learned about the federal agents' presence in her courthouse, she allegedly confronted them in the hallway. Surveillance footage released by Milwaukee County shows Dugan, wearing her black judicial robes, directly engaging with the ICE agents. According to the federal complaint, she told the agents they needed a judicial warrant, not just an administrative one, and directed them to go speak with the chief judge's office. Here's where things get really interesting. While the agents were being sent away, Judge Dugan made a critical decision. Instead of proceeding with the scheduled hearing, even though the victims of Flores-Ruiz's alleged domestic violence were present in the courtroom, she took matters into her own hands. Federal prosecutors alleged that she personally escorted Flores-Ruiz and his attorney through what's called a jury door, a restricted exit typically used only by jurors, not defendants or their lawyers. This wasn't just any door, it led to a non-public hallway that allowed Flores-Ruiz to exit the courthouse through a route that would avoid the waiting federal agents. Think about that for a moment. A sitting judge allegedly used her position and knowledge of the courthouse layout to help someone evade federal law enforcement. But the story doesn't end there. One alert federal agent witnessed Flores-Ruiz and his attorney exiting through this unusual route and followed them. Once outside the building, Flores-Ruiz apparently realized he was being pursued and took off running. A brief foot chase ensued, and he was ultimately apprehended by ICE officers. So, while Judge Dugan's alleged intervention delayed his arrest, it didn't prevent it. The federal response was swift and dramatic. On April 25th, exactly 1 week after the courthouse incident, FBI agents arrested Judge Dugan at the very same Milwaukee County courthouse where she had been working. Sources say more than half a dozen federal agents showed up in what observers described as an unusual show of force, arresting her near the courthouse cafeteria. FBI Director Kash Patel even posted a photo on social media showing Judge Dugan in handcuffs outside the courthouse. The charges against Judge Dugan are serious. She faces 2 federal counts: obstruction of proceedings before a department or agency of the United States, which is a felony carrying a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison, and concealing a person to prevent arrest, which is a misdemeanor with a maximum penalty of 1 year in prison. If convicted on both counts, she could face up to 6 years behind bars and a $350,000 fine. Judge Dugan has pleaded not guilty to all charges, but her legal team's strategy reveals just how unprecedented this case really is. They filed a motion to dismiss the charges based on the principle of judicial immunity, essentially arguing that judges cannot be prosecuted for actions they take in their official capacity, even if those actions might appear questionable. This is where the case gets legally fascinating. Judicial immunity is a well-established principle in American law designed to protect judges from prosecution or lawsuits for their judicial decisions. The idea is that judges need to be able to make tough decisions without fear of personal consequences. But the question in this case is, where does judicial immunity end? Judge Dugan's attorneys argued that she was simply doing her job, managing her courtroom and protecting the integrity of the judicial process. They claimed that the federal government violated Wisconsin's sovereignty by disrupting a state courtroom and prosecuting a state judge. They also argued that the prosecution violated the Constitution's separation of powers by interfering with Wisconsin's ability to administer its own courts. But on Tuesday, U.S. District Judge Lynn Adelman rejected those arguments entirely. In his ruling, he made it clear that judicial immunity has limits. Quote, "There is no basis for granting immunity simply because some of the allegations in the indictment describe conduct that could be considered part of a judge's job." He added that even if a more limited version of judicial immunity exists, it doesn't support dismissing this indictment. Judge Adelman's decision upheld an earlier recommendation for us, Maya magistrate judge, who also ruled that the case should proceed to trial. The federal judge noted that while the particulars of this case may be unusual, there is no firmly established judicial immunity that bars criminal prosecution of judges for judicial acts. This ruling is significant because it establishes that judges are not above the law, even when acting in their official capacity. It suggests that there's a line between legitimate judicial decision-making and obstruction of federal law enforcement, and Judge Dugan allegedly crossed that line. The Trump administration has been particularly vocal about this case, using it as an example of what they see as judicial overreach and obstruction of immigration enforcement.
Because they think he's going to be good for votes, and I think he's very bad for votes. These people are deranged. He's not good for votes. He beat the hell out of his wife. His wife is afraid to even talk about him. She's been mauled by this animal. And, through a system of liberal courts, he's doing things. But, we have that under control. And Pam has got that very much under control. Do you want to comment on it, Pam?
No, we've got him under control. He will no longer terrorize our country. He's currently charged with human smuggling, including children. The guy needs to be in prison. He doesn't need to be on the streets like all these liberals want him to be. And as part of this operation here in D.C., we've also taken off MS-13 members. We've taken, I think just last night, we got a TDA guy off our streets right here, right around from where we all work. Another TDA member gone.
Department of Homeland Security officials have called Judge Dugan's alleged actions shocking and shameful, accusing her of intentionally misdirecting federal agents to help an illegal immigrant evade arrest. The administration has made it clear they view this as part of a broader pattern of resistance to federal immigration enforcement. But Judge Dugan's supporters see it differently. In body camera footage released by Milwaukee police, Judge Dugan defended her actions, saying she didn't hide Flores-Ruiz in a jury room or her chambers. She said she had them leave out the back door, which I do when the circumstances warrant it. She also claimed she hadn't given Flores-Ruiz special treatment and that she didn't even know if he was an undocumented immigrant. The Wisconsin Supreme Court has already taken action, temporarily relieving Judge Dugan of her duties while the federal charges are pending. The court said this action was in the public interest to protect confidence in Wisconsin's judicial system. So, what makes Eduardo Flores-Ruiz's case so significant that it led to a federal judge being arrested? Flores-Ruiz isn't just any undocumented immigrant. According to federal authorities, he has what they call a laundry list of violent criminal charges, including strangulation and suffocation, battery, and domestic abuse. He had illegally entered the United States twice, first being deported in 2013, then unlawfully re-entering. At the time of the courthouse incident, Flores-Ruiz was facing serious domestic violence charges. The March 12th incident that led to his charges involved a fight with two roommates after he was accused of playing music too loudly. But the charges suggest this was more than just a noise dispute. They include allegations of strangulation, battery, and domestic abuse. This context is crucial because it raises questions about judicial priorities. Critics argue that Judge Dugan was more concerned with protecting someone from immigration enforcement than with ensuring justice for alleged victims of domestic violence. The fact that the victims were actually present in the courtroom, and Judge Dugan decided not to proceed with the hearing adds another layer of controversy. The case also highlights the ongoing tension between federal immigration enforcement and local judicial systems. Many jurisdictions across the country have adopted sanctuary policies that limit cooperation with federal immigration authorities. But this case goes beyond passive non-cooperation. It involves active alleged obstruction by a sitting judge. Legal experts are watching this case closely because it could set important precedents. If Judge Dugan is convicted, it would send a clear message that judicial immunity has limits and that judges can be held criminally accountable for obstructing federal law enforcement. If she's acquitted, it could embolden other judges to take similar actions. The timing of this case is also significant. It comes during the Trump administration's renewed focus on immigration enforcement, including operations at courthouses. The administration has made it clear that it views courthouse arrests as necessary to apprehend individuals who might otherwise evade immigration authorities. But critics argue that courthouse arrests create a chilling effect, discouraging immigrants from participating in the justice system as witnesses or victims. They worry that people will avoid courthouses entirely if they fear being arrested by immigration agents, potentially undermining the administration of justice. Judge Dugan's case also raises questions about the proper role of state judges in federal immigration matters. While immigration law is clearly within federal jurisdiction, state judges regularly deal with cases involving undocumented immigrants. The question is whether state judges have any obligation to facilitate federal immigration enforcement, or whether they can actively impede it. The legal implications extend beyond immigration law. This case touches on fundamental questions about federalism, separation of powers, and the independence of the judiciary. If federal authorities can prosecute state judges for their courtroom decisions, even controversial ones, what does that mean for judicial independence? As this case moves forward, both sides are preparing for what could be a high-stakes trial. Judge Dugan's attorneys have expressed disappointment with the court's decision to let the case proceed, but they say they look forward to the trial, which will show Judge Dugan did nothing wrong and simply treated this case like any other in front of her courtroom. Federal prosecutors, meanwhile, are preparing to prove that Judge Dugan's actions went far beyond normal judicial discretion and constituted criminal obstruction of federal law enforcement. They'll likely argue that no judge has the right to actively help someone evade a valid federal arrest warrant, regardless of their personal views on immigration policy. A scheduling hearing is set for September 3rd, and both sides have indicated they'd like the trial to begin before the end of the year. No trial date has been set yet, but this case is likely to be closely watched by judges, law enforcement officials, and immigration advocates across the country. The outcome could have far-reaching implications for how similar situations are handled in the future.
They determined Dennis is in the passenger side of the truck. The female ICE agent or HSI agent is on that side of the truck. So the male ICE agent walks around from the driver's side to the passenger side, where they immediately inform him that they're going to take him into custody. And he tries to run. When he tries to run, then the male agent grabs him and goes to the ground with him. And a scuffle ensues. I'm told that the fight lasted about 5 minutes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, a 5-minute fight is a long time. During the fight, finally, the female ICE agent is able to spray with pepper spray, and Dennis turns loose of the ICE agent, who he has successfully gotten on top of and is holding down. Then Dennis Miranda jumps up and he runs into the woods. The HSI agents chase him into the woods until they lose sight of him and ultimately summon the sheriff's office.
If Judge Dugan is convicted, it could deter other judges from taking similar actions. The case demonstrates the complex challenges law enforcement faces when pursuing individuals who may attempt to evade arrest, sometimes resulting in dangerous confrontations. If she's acquitted, it might encourage more active resistance to federal immigration enforcement in state courthouses. This case represents more than just the prosecution of one judge. It's a test of the boundaries between state and federal authority, between judicial independence and law enforcement, and between personal conscience and professional duty. The stakes are high, and the precedent that emerges from this case could shape courthouse dynamics for years to come. As we continue to follow this developing story, one thing is clear: the intersection of immigration, enforcement, and judicial independence remains one of the most contentious issues in American law today. Judge Hannah Dugan's case may well become the defining legal battle that determines where those boundaries lie.